Peace be with you, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Trevor. Very grateful to have you here. And today's video I'm going to be doing a full review of this fragrance right here, COPAL AZUR from Aedes de Venustas. So I'm going to go over a brief overview of the fragrance, kind of talk about the background a little bit, the perfumer, some of their previous works, and then move into the performance, projection, and popularity of the fragrance, going from there into the taste, texture, and tone, and then finally ending off with who, when, and where. So starting off with the fragrance itself, it was inspired by a certain type of resin called COPAL, for which there's no way to extract the essence of the fragrance from the resin. So the creative director commissioned the perfumer to use other resins as a accord to replicate the smell of this resin, COPAL. And I believe that the creative director did so after spending a vacation doing a surfing trip, I want to say, where there was some access to those resins nearby where the surf site was, hence the AZUR, which is a Spanish or a Mesoamerican word from that subset of languages that is referencing the color blue. And so this is very much it has oceanic tones to it. Now, the perfumer that was commissioned for this fragrance is Betrand Duchafour, my favorite perfumer, who has also done Jubilation Man from Amouage, Jubilation 25, and also Sartorial from Penhaligon's, one of the benchmark fougere barbershop style fragrances in my opinion. And in terms of other fragrances in my collection that COPAL AZUR smells like, it is the closest, in my opinion, to something like 40 knots, which, in my opinion, this is sort of designer-esque, while this is truly niche. So, like I said, 2014 release. It is a very much a salty ambery style fragrance, which is why I compared it to 40 knots, another salty ambery style fragrance. This one, however, is much more ozonic. It has this very ethereal quality to it. It reminds me very much of some type of incense, smoke, or vapors that would be coming off of maybe not a church, but like a temple or a Buddhist temple, something like that, where there's a very meditative type quality coming out of the overall scent profile here. It reminds me very much of like the vastness of an ocean, or the vastness even of space. It is, I believe, predominantly built out of frankincense to help recapture the accord of the COPAL. There's also some cardamom in here that is like very present in the opening and kind of subdues over time. So it has this very spicy opening with the cardamom that also adds to the sweetness of the overall composition. There is, other than that, I think there's like some myrrh resin, some frankincense, some ozonic notes, some cardamom, and the salt. So those are really the main four notes that I get out of the overall scent profile when it really wafts across my nose. If I could kind of paint a picture of what this fragrance smells like, there's a lot of things going on in terms of imagery. One of them is almost like if the earth were to be consumed by an expanding sun, and the sun were dying in some sense and just expanding out in space. The earth itself would be kind of baked like a pot in a kiln, and all the oceans would dry up, and then the earth itself would just be this it would just be a rock burning off in space, but there'd be a slight salty quality to it and a slight smell of like the ozone just evaporating. That's kind of what I get with this fragrance. It reminds me of like the earth just being consumed by the sun and the salty aura that would be coming off of the planet and the rock. Yeah, like a baked clay. There's definitely something resembling that in here. It kind of reminds me of maybe what it would smell like to walk across the parted sea, like on the seafloor as Moses was splitting the Red Sea, and there's this tower of ocean on either side of you, and this walking path straight forward with the salty smell of the ocean. So there's very much a grandeur about this fragrance that kind of moves me into that direction of those imageries that are very much religious in some sense, or at least like celestial or very vast. This also kind of just reminds me of being in a seaside cave with a campfire and you're looking out into the Milky Way. Like there's no light pollution, you can see the full glory of the heavens out there on the horizon, and you're just in this sort of oceanic grotto with a small campfire keeping you warm alongside of all of the scent of the ocean and everything. Very much a awesome fragrance in that it evokes these types of imageries for me. And it does have this very blue-red color tone. It's a very much like a ambery, cool, navy blue, orange color scheme, I want to say, is really what this one sort of brings to the table for me. Now, in terms of projection, performance, and popularity, the projection on this is actually pretty monstrous, especially in the opening. It's very effusive, and it definitely covers a lot of ground. That kind of subdues a little bit after about a half an hour though, so it doesn't stay beast mode for long, and it kind of comes into a nice little aura, but it still pumps pretty well throughout the wearing experience. And then the overall performance of the fragrance is I can always smell it on myself after going to bed, so I'm going to say this is very much long lasting, at least 8 to 10 hours. And then the popularity, it's not quite mass appealing. You're definitely going to get more compliments with 40 knots than COPAL AZUR, but this one I think is, if you're looking for a unique signature or you want to have something, like I said, for evoking a meditative type trance, going into just carrying yourself in a way that is very head turning. Definitely like a showstopper fragrance. It might not be garnering compliments per se, but it's definitely going to garner attention in my opinion, because it's not unpleasant. Even though it might not be mass appealing, it's definitely something that no one's going to like be turned off by, I would imagine. But it's not quite something I would consider a compliment getter. Now, the taste, texture, and tone. This is very much a sort of like a bittersweet fragrance. There's an earthy quality to it, a stone-like quality to it that kind of evokes a little bit of a bitter tone. The salt also ferments that little bit of a bitter quality. But overall, it's very sweet. Like there's that cardamom, the myrrh, and frankincense all coming together. It almost gives it a little bit of a cola vibe, like the fizzy quality and the ambery caramel kind of taste that a soda, a fresh carbonated soda, would give you. There's a little bit of that going on in here, which I think comes in from the frankincense, which can have that little bit of a sparkly soda cola kind of taste to it. And then the overall texture of the fragrance is very airy. Like the ozonic quality is very much the predominant texture of this fragrance. It just feels very much like an aura around you, and you can smell it in the texture of the fragrance. It just has this almost force field type presence to it. Otherwise, extremely smooth and a little bit smoky in terms of the textures. It's very ethereal. It has this very, just something almost like a thick fog that you could cut with a knife. It's very much something that's just non-physical, but also present, and that's sort of how the texture is presented in the fragrance. And then the overall who, when, and where. This is definitely for somebody that is artistic. This is for an artistic individual, I think. Somebody that is connected with some type of higher power or a practice, somebody involved in a spiritual practice or a self-discipline in some sense, but just somebody that's connected to any kind of, just like an artistic muse, somebody that has a connection with a muse. It doesn't have to necessarily be a religious connotation, but just very much somebody that is moves to the beat of their own drum, is very much for somebody who is an individual, but also not like a type A personality that's like sort of projecting their individuality out into the world, but just kind of, you know, is at peace with themselves and is appropriating the world around them in a way that isn't sort of following the herd in any capacity or moving about autonomously and mindlessly, but just somebody who's very conscious of their self and the world around them. This is very much for somebody that is, I think anybody could wear this. It has a little bit more of a mature quality just because it evokes an old soul appeal. I think this is definitely for somebody who's an old soul, so you don't have to be old, but you do have to have a certain degree of wisdom, I think, for you to carry this in some regard. And then in terms of the when and where, I would wear this. You could wear this as a signature scent, in my opinion. It is very versatile. I think it is in some degree a blue fragrance. You do get a lot of that oceanic, ozonic presentation with the fragrance. It's very versatile in that regard because it's both fresh and sweet at the same time, like a lot of conventionally mass appealing fragrances. But the overall composition, the artistry going into it from Duchafour, and the uniqueness of the scent profile makes this just something, like I said, you could wear this anytime, anywhere, but it does have a certain quality about it that just makes it more of like something that I often just wear around the house or at home or in a very introspective type environment. So, but I personally would consider this like a signature, and if I had to whittle down my collection to maybe like 10 bottles, if I was trying to wear things that I liked the scent profile of and not necessarily what I think would be working in terms of a wardrobe with the broader audiences that I'd be around, this would be one I would definitely keep in the collection, one I would keep to present myself, a fragrance accord that I think is very matching to my own character. So it is I would consider it a blue fragrance and hyper versatile, and for anybody of any age, as long as you have a little bit of an old soul, in my opinion. And then the wear. This is definitely something that I think shines its brightest in the month of September. So that transitionary period between the summer and the fall is where this is the best suited for, I think. The dry quality about the incense and the salt, I think, shines its best in the fall time because the air is starting to dry out a little bit. I wore this the other day in high humidity, and it somewhat muted the whole fragrance and reduced the projection quite a bit from the heaviness of the moisture in the air. But it effuses much better when the air is dry, so it carries a little bit better in that type of environment. But the salty, ozonic qualities play well into a summertime sort of theme. So late August, early September, I think, is the best time to wear this fragrance, even though overall it is something versatile enough to wear year-round. The weightiness of like the myrrh resin and the frankincense is great for the winter time, and the ozonic, airy sort of atmospheric quality is great for the springtime when the rains are kind of hitting, and you get that same similar feeling from the fresh rains just kind of hitting the pavement. The petrichor kind of accord. This doesn't really have that, but it goes in a similar direction. So I think this is, like I said, a perfect year-round signature fragrance, but it shines its brightest in late summer, early autumn. And then if I had to give this an overall rating, for me personally, this is a 9 out of 10, but I think that actually, yeah, so I don't think this is going to be everyone's cup of tea. For me personally, in my own taste, it's a 9 out of 10, so I will give it an overall rating of an 8.5 out of 10. Super high quality ingredients, well executed. The price is a little bit extravagant as well, but I think this is better than 40 knots, which I gave an 8 out of 10, so this is going to get an 8.5 from me. And like I said, this is only purchasable directly from the distributor from Aedes de Venustas. This is $245 for 100 ml, so it might be a little overpriced, but I don't think so. I think this is very much artistry in a bottle, worth what I think Duchafour the perfumer did a good job here, and I highly recommend sampling this one and getting your nose on it. It's one of my favorites. It used to come in a different bottle that was blue. I'll try to put a picture of that one up here just to get a reference point if you see it on eBay or somewhere like that. But yeah, COPAL AZUR, really awesome, unique little hidden gem niche fragrance, worth checking out to get you a sample. 8.5 out of 10 from me, and that was my full review of this. Let me know if you've tried it in the comment section down below, and as always, I appreciate you sticking with me to the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.